All right, so anybody want to guess what we're going to talk about today? I put this off. It was like on the schedule for week 5 and it just kept being put off. But I was inspired by all your talks. And so I'm supposed to do the vitamin mineral talks. We'll see how far we get. Yeah, and then when we're missing a few people, I want to talk about next week because I won't see you on Monday. And then suddenly it's going to be Wednesday of the 10th week. And so we're going to have a talk. Monday's a holiday. Monday is Memorial Day. Yeah. So that is why, yeah. So you guys, I'm wearing blue still to remind you, you guys are doing your blue zones. And the G-bombs, most of you submitted it, but there's a couple people who need to get that in. There was actually something to submit once I unlocked it. And the blue zones, again, is kind of a capstone. You're doing 4 things, which hopefully you have over the term evolved into doing that. So some of you, it's kind of evaluating and looking at your stuff. But we're going to talk about vitamins, and here we go. I found this ad from, I don't know, 50s, 60s, and I just thought this was great. And it was when they started, I have a quick history slide on vitamins, but when they started isolating the vitamins, it was also when we started refining food. And so one of the first things was polishing rice and taking all the fiber and everything out. And so Wonder Bread is called Wonder Bread because they could polish the wheat, get rid of everything, all the nutrients that were already packed in there. And then they put back, I think it was 8 vitamins initially. So it was the 8 that they knew of, which would have been like thymine and yeah. And apparently they were doing that to donuts too. Which is hysterical because they're deep fried, probably then in lard, so it's probably healthier than what they're deep fried in now, and highly processed. So a quick history lesson, and a lot of you talked about this with your 1 vitamin. So this is scurvy here, so that's from, all of this is like 100 years ago, and a lot of these things, the history of vitamins, they really go back to around then, which is when they started sailing for longer times. So this would have been in the 1500s, 1600s, and they were out on the ocean, so they didn't have access to fresh food, fresh fruits and vegetables, which is where you're getting your vitamins. And they suddenly were getting scurvy, which Samantha talked about. And she said, I don't want to show you a picture because they're pretty disgusting, but all of these things, they are actually the least disgusting of all the ones. So pellagra was probably one of the hardest ones. It's not yours, or berry is the thymine one. That one's really hard, pellagra and some of the stuff. But anyway, these guys they realized it was not getting enough citrus fruit. And this says it was the surgeon, James Lynn. I had heard it was somebody different, that it was one of the captains of the ship actually started bringing fresh fruit with him, and those sailors didn't get sick and stuff. And so they realized there must have been something. I don't know if they realized yet that the idea that there's something in the fresh fruit, but that slide was wonderful. And so in Asia, about the same time, berry starts becoming really common in the 1800s because they started polishing rice. And so berry, I might have a picture. No, I thought this was interesting. I don't think I did because it's pretty disgusting. But berry is interesting if you ever Google it. It's thymine. It's going to be vitamin B1 deficiency. But they didn't know why, and it was because they were removing vitamins when they started polishing rice. And so we become more developed and we think that we're going to be healthier, and it's actually making us unhealthy. And that's a lot of what's going on now in medicine, because we just keep giving people pills thinking that's going to make them healthier, and really the best you can have. So I thought this was an interesting one because this would be obviously a common thing, but that was a pandemic, or at least in this area, it was berry. And so they either get where they look anorexic and they can barely walk, because basically thymine is what allows your body to use the glucose and change it into energy. So it's glycolysis needs it, and it's not glycolysis, it's a step between glycolysis and Krebs cycle. So it changes pyruvate to acetate, for those who've had the chemistry. But yeah, I thought this was interesting, and I didn't actually look it up, but I don't know if this became a fad during the pandemic, and that would explain why COVID is still not going away, because people are eating like crap instead of eating healthy whole foods and stuff. And then the little mouse is there because, so these are some of the guys who isolated the first vitamin. So it's going to require the technology to be there that they can start looking at molecules and the idea of molecules. And so the idea of molecules isn't until around 1900. And so it was actually Avogadro coined the term molecule, and everybody laughed at him. And so that would be the late 1800s. And it was in 1905 when Einstein, he has his doctorate, and then he tells like the head of the department there that his theory is totally wrong and explains why, and is very arrogant about it. And so he can't get hired anywhere because you don't go to these people who are like all proud of themselves. And so Einstein got a job as Albert Einstein. He was in Germany, I think so. And he got a job basically as a patent, writing patents, and he worked in a boxcar. And so he would get bored, and so he would work on physics stuff. So he was always a theoretical physics, so it didn't really matter if he had a lab. But in 1905, he came up with E equals mc squared, relativity, the photoelectric effect, which is what he won the Nobel Prize for, and then didn't have a problem getting a job. And then the fourth one was the idea of molecules, which was explaining what Brownian motion was, but suddenly everybody accepted there's such a thing as molecules, and then everybody starts isolating them. So like if you do caffeine, or like if you did those as your molecules and stuff, you'll probably notice that they're all suddenly isolated around this time, because it's when we start accepting that we're made up of things. It's when quantum mechanics is happening and things like that. Because before that, we weren't made of atoms. We were whole beings, and now we're made of atoms. So yeah, these are just different. This guy looks like he's in Japan, because Japan also did a lot of work, or China. But everywhere I look, they're saying that this was the first, this one they said was the first fat soluble one, and I would assume vitamin A was the first one isolated because they called it A. So I'm assuming it was probably isolated or named before B1 was. So B1 was probably right after it. I don't know if you remember. I don't know.
It was like there was a bunch of different dates, and it was like they had the idea that this thing existed, and then like it was isolated later.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming vitamin A has to be the first one because it got the designation of A. And so basically what this guy did is he fed rats either butter or lard. And butter, because of the yellow color, and actually butter historically was a really much darker color if they're fed with beta carotenes and stuff. So if the animals are eating grass and stuff, they're getting lots of beta carotenes, so they're going to have vitamin A. So actually butter is a good source of vitamin A, whereas lard doesn't have any in it. And so he saw the rats did well, or they didn't do well. And then in about the same year, I guess, so they all must be, because suddenly we have vitamin E, so B and then C and then D. And so this guy, Kashmir Funk, which is like such a wonderful name. Wouldn't that be great? And what's your name? Kashmir Funk. It's like Cosmo Kramer, right? That was just, anyway, he coins the term vitamin. And so I guess this guy must have just called it A, and your guy must have just called it B. And so he coins the term vitamin. And so an amine is these nitrogen groups. And so it stood for vital amine, or we've changed it now to a vital factor in the diet, because they don't all have a nitrogen group on them. But that's what the term means. And those of you who took chemistry are like, oh, of course, it must have an amine. That's where that comes from. And then it's really interesting. It wasn't until much later. So the fat soluble ones were discovered first, which I'll get to, until the 40s, that they start discovering all the water soluble ones. So B1 was, and then they just put anything that's water soluble as a B vitamin. And I think that's really weird, this timeline, that it took them that long to find vitamin C. So they must have had the concept of C, but they just had not isolated yet. And it probably has to do with, it's much harder to isolate something that's hydrophilic, that is water soluble, than something that's hydrophobic. I don't know why. Yeah, and it's probably why yours, like there were several different dates. So they had the concept, there had to be something in there, but apparently it took them a while to be able to isolate things that are water soluble. And I just thought that was just a picture when I was Googling pictures of mice eating butter. That's what came up. And it reminded me of my dog, if my dog gets hold of a peanut butter jar. And so I was thinking, well, what would have happened then if this guy, instead of butter and lard, had given some of the rats peanut butter? And that would have been a really happy rat, because animals, so if you're trying to catch a rat, which occasionally you get rats in your household, peanut butter is the way to go. They absolutely will go for the peanut butter, not necessarily as that jar. So when you Google vitamins, this is what you get. These are the minerals, and then these are the vitamins. And I will talk about the missing ones, because there did used to be a 4 and a 7 and an 8 and an 11. I forgot to look up F. I kept thinking last night, there's a letter I'm missing. And then I started thinking about my name and why there wasn't a vitamin J. But there must have been if there's a K, right? And then these are the minerals, which we may or may not get to. But they also show a great source of each of these. And so back to the mushroom thing, because so many of you, including myself, made comments about mushrooms was the hardest part of G-bombs. I haven't looked at that, just done this assignment enough. Mushrooms are actually a really great source of several different vitamins and minerals. And so I would encourage you, and again, it's learning how to cook with mushrooms or eat mushrooms and stuff. And it doesn't mean it's your whole meal. It's more like, it's like a flavoring that you're adding. Yeah. The Asians do it really well. Mushrooms are in everything. But we see nuts. I'm a little worried what that's supposed to be, but it looks like a squid or octopus arm. Yeah. Fascinating, some of these. This is interesting because I'd always heard selenium was pumpkin seed, but I think they're showing, I don't know, everybody has a different, what's your best source and stuff, but it was just a nice, pretty, vibrant picture. So we'll walk through the alphabets just briefly. And so I started with vitamin A and went down my own little rabbit hole, but as Amber said, and you probably all knew, you want to eat the rainbow. Like if I had to pick one of my favorite things that I got to do was doing the Roy G. Biv week. And rather than taking individual vitamins, this is where we kind of went off track 100 years ago, because we suddenly started, oh, wow, we can get a vitamin, we can get this, we can get that. And somebody happened to isolate this one vitamin from whatever, carrots, or I don't know what he isolates vitamin A from, but maybe it was butter, because he called it A. And it said there's so much more in each of these than just vitamin A. But you do want to eat, when you're on the lower end, the low frequency foods, so red, orange, and yellow are going to be loaded with the carotenoids. And there are many more than vitamin A. So anytime you have red, orange, and yellow. And this was actually a fascinating slide to me, because there's greens on here. And so greens apparently do everything. And so I had no idea, but these are some of the carotenoids. They aren't alpha, beta, gamma, some of them at the top, but they all have these structures, and it's hard to see the pictures. But those of you who took chemistry, 105, 106, these are hydrophobic. These are long carbon chains, and we don't see the oxygen. So water is made up of, right, H2O. And so it's oxygen that's going to make things water soluble. And we only have one little place where water would be interested, and the rest of it's not. And so this is not going to be water soluble. But it turns out there's over 600 carotenoids. And so initially when I was grading Amber's paper, I was like, why don't you go through all the other ones? And she did go through a couple, but I was like, oh, there's 600. And then I found out that was true for every category. So for the bees, they gave them all different numbers, but it turns out all of these have a whole bunch that are related and just slightly different. And one of the things that's going to be fascinating, I do want you guys to find a picture of what's in your spice, which isn't that hard to do, but it'll be harder for you to see than for me. The spices all have molecules that almost all look similar. Those you took Chem 105 with me, there was that one lab and had the pictures of them, and it was, you just looking at them and they all had almost the same shape, and then something changed, which is really interesting. Anyway, I'm not going to try to say any of these words because they're huge, but again, there's over 600 of these, and some of them are converted into vitamin A in our body, and that just happens to be with this guy isolated first, and they said it's vital. And now we're in that time of trying to erase this type of consciousness from us and realize you need to eat the whole food, because you need to get a whole range of these in rather than just one. And right, that's Amber talked about this, that these are different forms of vitamin A. So vitamin A, it turns out, is not just one molecule. It has different forms, and they each have like a niche different use. And the thing that's really interesting is it does have to, it is considered a vitamin because you have to get it in your diet. Our body doesn't make it on its own. So you don't have to take vitamin A in your diet. These things like the beta carotene gets changed into those. And so that's what it's showing from down here. And the thing that I'm pretty sure of is when the beta carotene gets, these are all symmetrical. If you look at all these pictures, and so you must get 2 of each molecule. I have no idea though. And the other thing, which I have a slide on this to emphasize again, is vitamin A is one of the fat soluble ones. It's hydrophobic. If you have to have fat in your diet, you can't be completely no fat to absorb these, but everything has a little bit of fat. The only exception would be fruits, have minimal fat, but there's still a little bit. But if you're going to take a multivitamin, so like if I feel like a cold or something's coming on, I might take a multivitamin. You want to take it with some kind of fat source so that you're going to get the maximum absorption of what's in there. And so, of course, one of the things that everybody thinks about for vitamin A is eye health. And Amber did a really great job about talking about, and I don't remember which one of those is really important to keep your eyes healthy. This was something I found, and I don't know if I have the study up there, but and it's because blue light is what we're all exposed to now. And the study was, I can't remember how long ago, but it is, we're staring at our computer screen, we're staring at our phone and stuff, and that actually is going to cause us all. It makes me wonder what's going on with our eyes, and that our eyes are going to, so macular, it's the back of the retina, and like my mom, who's 85, and her friends all have different kind of eye issues, but it made me ponder if we're going to start seeing this much younger and younger, and I'm saying like 30s, because stroke is showing up in people at 30. And so it really makes me worried, because people of your generation eat fast food, they're getting none of these vitamins, and they're staring at a screen all the time. And so they're just destroying their eyes, and you don't know it until it's there. The thing is, though, your body heals. And so you can't preach about it, but you just have to encourage people to eat more whole food. And sometimes it's learning how to make it. That's why I have you every week trying to make something and learning how. I absolutely love carrots. And so I just eat them every day just for my, when I'm feeling like I want something, because mentally you're in that mode. And then those 2 are actually the ones, there's probably more, but again, they're carotenoids. And to me, it was just really fascinating. It's really fascinating also watching the talks, because those of you who had chemistry, I did my job, and you geek out on the molecules also, but these are amazing that there are so many of these, and they all look absolutely the same, and then there'll just be one thing that's different. And I don't know if you guys remember back in Chem 105, the first week, that was your bonus question, was I actually had, I think it was beta carotene, you had to count the carbons and hydrogens, and like one person gets, actually you got it because you had Chem 106, but And now you could do it and be like, oh, I can count those. No problem. Maybe it still takes a little bit of time and work. The other thing about vitamin A that you probably all knew is it is an antioxidant. And so I'll talk about antioxidants in a little bit, but to me, that's the two big things I think about is for your eyes, but it's an antioxidant for your whole body. And it's working to help your eyes because it's an antioxidant, which it cleans up the damage that has happened. And it also is big for cancer. So when I had cancer, that was one of the things the naturopath had me on. It was one of the B vitamins, and I can't remember, like they had a special order because of the dose they had me on that one. But she had me on really high beta carotene. So I don't do vitamin A. When I look at vitamins, if I was going to get a multivitamin, it should be beta carotene. So your body goes through this stuff to change it into A. That's how I had always learned it. But it is big, especially for lung cancer. So apoptosis is the cell explodes. It destroys the cell. And yeah, there we go. This is actually a huge field of study, not specifically with vitamins, but how to get cells that are too old. We need those cells to move on and regenerate. I talked about autophagy and stuff, and so that goes hand in hand. And one of the guys who's considered one of the premier researchers on this, his mom became ill. And he suddenly was having trouble getting hold of doctors, and he himself was a doctor, and he suddenly realized how messed up the system was. And so he started doing a lot of his own research and wrote a book that I gave to a student right before COVID. It came out like a year before COVID, but it was on diet and how important diet was. And he changed his mom's diet, was a lot of what he did, and helped to get her healthier. And so what we eat, which is whole foods, is going to help your body to go through recycling. So soluble vitamins, you have to be careful with because you can take too much. And so it was something when Miranda talked, because she was doing a B vitamin. So B and C are water soluble. Anything that's water soluble, they make it a B vitamin. C is its own category, but the other vitamins are all fat soluble, and you can overdose on them. They can be toxic, and that's because water soluble ones, your body pees it out. You either get diarrhea or you get that colorful pee from the B vitamin. And I forgot to look up for sure which one it is. I'm pretty sure it's niacin, but you said your teacher said thiamine. I've never heard that. I'm pretty sure it's niacin, which is B3.
Yeah.
And it's niacin that colors. I don't know. This is me trying to remember. B12. Yeah. Anyway, it is almost always when people do mega vitamin therapy because they think more is better, and that's not actually true. And the other issue would be if children accidentally consume it. So that is why we have everything made that you have trouble opening it, so kids can't. So my dad's one sister died at like 1 or 2 because she got into vitamins, because this would have been in the 1930s, because we didn't have these special lids then, and kids could just open anything, and kids climb on counters. You all did it and got into stuff. And so everything's made now, so kids can't. We have locks on cabinets, right? So when you have children, you got to proof your house, or if you have a cat, you do the same thing. But basically, I have one here for vitamin A, but when I looked for E, D, K, they're all pretty much the same. They pretty much make you feel crappy. I had a student last night, and he's dealing with like seasonal allergy issues, and he was asking me, should he go ahead and get a steroid shot? And I said, well, my mom did, and she ended up with every possible side effect that you can get. And so these seem to be the side effects for everything, which is basically your body is not happy. So these are the fat soluble, and again, the other term for fat is lipid soluble. So A, D, E, and K. And those of you who've had the organic chemistry, I figured we could geek out on the pictures. And so you can see for all of you, these where they don't show it, those are carbons. They each only have like 1 oxygen, which water like D does, oh yeah, that has one. Yeah, and so they're fat soluble, they're gonna get stored in your fat tissue, and which is good, you're storing it, but you can end up having too much in storage. The one that's interesting is D, and when I get to the slide, I don't know if I talk about it on the slide, but D, you cannot overdose on if you're getting it from the sunshine. So your body actually has a way to break down when you have enough. But if you take it internally, you can get too high of dose. But most people are way under on their vitamin D, so it's usually not an issue. Vitamin A, it's really easy to get way over too much. And so that's probably the most common toxicity. But again, if you're getting it from whole foods, you won't go into the toxicity because it's kind of like your body knows what to do with it. And I really believe it all has to do with vibes and stuff, that we are truly vibrational beings. So if you're getting it in whole food or from the sunshine, you're not going to have the toxicity issue because it's coming packaged with other stuff. It's more when we're taking it as a tablet. Yeah, and again, this fascinates me that that greens actually have provitamin A, because I've never thought about that. I had always heard it's red, orange, and yellow, and so that blew me away. This slide's also really interesting, yeah. And a lot of these also animal products, because they're fat soluble, and so it's the animal eating the food that had it in, and it's going to accumulate in their fat tissue. And when we're eating meat, we're eating a lot of fat with that. Oh, and then this one down here, which I think I have if I get to K, if I make it that far, the intestinal microorganisms. My understanding is they actually do a lot for us, but vitamin K is actually, you can get it. And my sister is on Coumadin as a blood thinner. And so she, like when she's at my mom's, we can't have spinach. Can't have spinach because she's on Coumadin and stuff. And I just sit there and I try not to visibly roll my eyes, but I'm sure I do, because I'm like, they have it wrong. She should be taking vitamin K, but if you're getting it in the whole food, I'm sure it's not going to interfere. But I'm sure they fed rats huge amounts of spinach and then showed that the Coumadin couldn't do its thing. But it's also that your gut, your microbiome is making your vitamins also. And so you're always feeding your gut, and it's the B vitamins is my understanding that they're making a lot of those for us. And so that's probably why when they took all the fiber, even though B1 is in the fiber, it's probably also you lost the fiber, and so the microbiome wasn't getting fed. About 100 years ago when we started isolating everything is also when our microbiome starts changing. So you can ponder all these things. So vitamin D is a steroid. And so let's see, does anybody remember? I'm looking at my Chem 106. So where in your body, what is going to make vitamin D? What's the precursor molecule? Cholesterol. Cortisol is also a steroid, so it's going to come from cholesterol. And so I mentioned that I did a talk for us in here on cholesterol. That cholesterol gets a really bad rap, but it's absolutely needed. It's not essential because our body does make it. Our liver, of course, makes it. And so vitamin D is made from cholesterol in our skin, and it is sunlight. It is the gorgeous sunlight that does it. It's a steroid. And this is an interesting picture because it folded it so you can see this. This is a steroid core in cholesterol, but there is a gap here. And so most of the pictures have it bent out, so it's harder to see that it's pretty much like almost the exact same thing, except that this bond breaks and that becomes a double bond. So it's an enzyme in our skin that is stimulated by sunlight. If you use sunscreen, it blocks this enzyme. So you should go out in the sun first and then put this. So if you're going to be outside all day, and definitely those of you who are very fair skinned, you should protect yourself, but you have to get sunlight. You have to get some sunlight. They estimate we've actually done more damage by our fear of the sun than the amount of cancers we've protected against. And so breast cancer has a huge correlation to vitamin D deficiency. Breast cancer pretty much only exists north of the 45th parallel, which is us. The 45th parallel goes right through Salem, and it's because we don't get enough sunlight for half of the year. So the good news, it's fat soluble because it's pretty much all carbons and hydrogens. So we store it. But we only store it for a certain amount of time. And so you have to supplement with vitamin D in the winter months. I don't supplement this time of year because I get sunshine. It's so again, it's not essential. So the sunlight is considered essential. I forget how many essentials there are, and that number is always changing, but water is essential and sunlight is essential. So vitamin D is not actually a vitamin because it's actually steroid, and it's not actually essential, except most people have to supplement with it. Half of our country does because half of us are too far north. So the whole idea of people like intuitively wanting to live in Florida in the winter months or in Arizona or Southern California, we gravitate towards the sun because we must know that we need it. Anyway. And it is connected with rickets. So rickets is when their bones are not working right. So the thing that's interesting is it helps the balance of calcium and phosphorus. But magnesium, sodium, potassium, all of you guys who talked about the minerals, they're all involved in bone health. And so we all keep like looking at calcium and saying, oh, osteoporosis, and oh, you have too much calcium or not enough calcium. But every single one of you who did a mineral somehow tied in, and you're like, why is this never talked about? Like the importance of this mineral with bone health, that they're only talking about, hey, you should have calcium. And that's because the milk industry has a pretty good lobby group for a long time, and milk is high in calcium, and so as opposed to some of these other things. But so we want strong bones, and like I said, the magnesium, and that's the way I had read about it, was magnesium helps calcium get into the bones. So yeah, and phosphorus, nobody did phosphorus, and so your bones stay strong. It helps your immune system. So there are tons of papers, none in this country during COVID. So for the past 2 years, and a lot of countries, especially poorer countries, were supplementing with vitamin D and also mega doses of vitamin C. So you can actually go across the street here to the naturopath. There's several places that you can get IV drip bag of vitamin C. And so if you, rather than having to deal with when you feel like something's coming on, so you're getting huge doses, or vitamin D that, and this was, and I talked about this before, the first study, India especially was doing a lot with this, but one of the first studies, when the first COVID round came, countries that were further, in states that were further south didn't have as high rates necessarily, and they were getting sunlight. And the thing that was interesting was Italy, because people in Italy never supplement with vitamin D because they're Mediterranean, so they're thinking they get enough sunlight. And then the Northern European countries know they don't get enough sunlight, so they always supplement with vitamin D, and they had extremely low rates of COVID. And so they started really looking into, was it the vitamin D supplement, because they know it bolsters immunity. But it's fascinating, again, the papers. I've been looking at these papers for 2 years, and like, there's like nothing in this country, or the people start going on YouTube, they get their websites get shut down because they're promoting that. There's other things we can do to help. I don't know, nursing homes, a lot of nursing homes actually supplement with vitamin D. You guys do.
Yeah, but that's up to the doctor. But yes,
Oh,
all
okay.
doctors are ordering that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And so our immune cells actually have a receptor for this molecule. But the reason in nursing homes is they're not getting out in the sunshine, even in the summer, for 15 minutes in the sunshine. And it's, you hear different numbers, how long you need, like, is it 15, is it 30 minutes? And it helps your coordination of your muscles. And so that signal between your neurons and your muscles. And so get sunlight, yeah, before the rain comes again. All right, and so you get better balance and stability. So again, in nursing homes, these people are falling all the time. And MS, there's a huge connection with multiple sclerosis and vitamin D deficiency. And yeah, so MS and falling in older people, and cancer. There's actually tons of articles out that there's several cancers that are absolutely related to vitamin D, and estrogen is also made from cholesterol. So when you're making vitamin D, because you're getting out in the sunshine, you're not going to be making the estrogens, and several of the cancers are related to high levels of estrogens. And so they actually see people with normal vitamin D have 50% the rates of breast cancer. There you go. If a drug could reduce breast cancer by 50%, it would just be applauded. And here they're saying, go get sunlight for 20 minutes a day. And in the winter, you would have to supplement. I used to actually do the cod liver oil because I had A and D, and I had a recommendation, which was a really good source of it. But yeah, prostate, colon cancers. Colon cancers, I've seen a lot of articles about that, and I don't know why and fully how it works for cancer prevention, but people, before you get cancer, you should get sunlight every day. Deficiencies, depression is probably one of the biggest, and fatigue, our immune system, our bones become brittle, muscle aches, losing hair, and pretty much the autoimmunes and cancer that they should be recommending go out and get some sunlight. Yeah, and the thing that's interesting is when you have a vitamin D deficiency, you also often have higher cholesterol. And so it's because the cholesterol for some reason. So why is the vitamin D deficient and why is the cholesterol high, which is actually interesting. And it's not whether, it doesn't matter which came first, which came second, but going out in the sunlight. All right, another one of the fat soluble ones is E. And the biggest thing I had always heard with E is nuts. And E, I don't know if it's on here. They give you, these are those generic things that you can find, and you can Google any of these to read about it. But again, they're micro, like they've isolated. Reductionism is nutrition to a core. The thing that's really fascinating to me is what I had always learned about vitamin E is vitamin E really protects your lipids, so your cell membranes and stuff. And the other thing that's really interesting here, and I have a thing on it, is they talk about the sunflower oil is a good source, but sunflower oil is going to be highly oxidized and stuff. And so if nothing else, you're eating the seed, it's not going to be oxidized. You shouldn't be eating the oil. And anyway, there's a whole bunch of these, and apparently the picture is going to show up in a minute, but it's anything that's a phenolic compound. Phenol is. But in 1936, it was first isolated that it was needed for rats to be fertile. And so it comes from, they're called, tocopherol is how you say it. Vitamin E, there's several vitamin E's, and I have a picture in a moment. And so tocopherol means birth, to bear, and so to be able to carry the baby. And so like for Samantha, she wants to go into helping with that. And so it's not, again, it's like the vitamin A. You don't want vitamin E, you want the tocopherols. And so the picture must come up later. So this is the thing that, and I figured you would like this. So there's alpha tocopherol and there's gamma. There's going to be a whole bunch of them. Apparently the picture hasn't come up yet. But European diets are really high in alpha tocopherol because they eat mostly olive and sunflower oils. And our diet is really high in gamma tocopherol because we eat mostly soy and corn oil. It's like in everything, unless you don't eat packaged food, which hopefully you guys have cut way down, or if not, yeah. And the picture, there we go, finally. So there is a whole mess of these, just like with the vitamin A. And so the guy named it vitamin E. And then as we started isolating more, and so a slight difference I don't know enough other than to say, well, that's fascinating because olive oil also has other wonderful things in it. And so it makes me wonder if alpha is much better form of it. And then there's the trienols, which just mean they have three double bonds in there, also have kind of activity. And so vitamin E is a huge antioxidant, and I'll talk about antioxidants in a moment. But getting it in the whole foods is always going to be better. You're only going to get a certain amount, but it's mixed with all these other things that are going to amplify it, and your body seems to know what to do with it. And then vitamin K, nobody ever picks vitamin K. Nobody picked it in here. Nobody has ever picked it in any of my biochem classes. Somebody finally picked vitamin E because I had to coerce them into it in my other class. Everybody picks C and D, always go. A often because it's A. But K I know just a little bit about because, again, my sister can't do spinach and stuff. But K is really high in the leafy greens. But it's more than that. It's in the leafy greens. It's fat soluble, and leafy greens don't have a lot of fat. It is that the leafy greens feed your microbiome, and your microbiome makes one of the forms. Vitamin K also is not one vitamin, it's a class of vitamins. And so you can, even if you haven't had chemistry, you can see the similarity in the structures and stuff. And so I'm pretty sure it's the middle one, which is K2. Right, so K1 comes from the leafy greens, and I think K2 is the one that is made by your microbiome. And for those of you who've taken anatomy, when you hear vitamin K, the first thing that comes in your mind is blood clotting, because you all memorized that. Or if you haven't gotten that far in anatomy, right, you memorized whatever the 30 steps, and you knew it for the test, and then you forgot the next day. I don't know why they have you do it, but vitamin K is actually one of the steps in the process of your blood clotting. And somebody figured out all the steps, and I don't remember how many steps. It's probably not 30, it's probably like 20 or something. But vitamin K is actually one of the steps needed for your blood to clot. So it's absolutely essential for that. It's also important for bone health, and it's also an antioxidant. So all of the fat soluble ones are antioxidant. Pretty much all of these are antioxidants. Yeah. And so eat your greens. And this is from some zoo, and so that's why you would never see a monkey or ape or whatever, but eating your greens, because that feeds your microbiome. It's anti-inflammatory. It also helps your brain function, and so it does everything. And most people, all they think about with vitamin K, I know he just keeps doing it because it's the same clip. And the deficiency, they do actually give newborns vitamin K shots. You can actually, that's the only place I saw any deficiency of, and I remember learning about that. And the thing that's interesting is if they have some kind of disorder or they have an impaired microbiota. And what do we do to almost everybody now when they're infants? Is we put them on antibiotics. And it's just an interesting fad because it just destroys your microbiota. And so we probably all have, well, not now, because you guys hopefully are eating your greens like that monkey was. And so, right, there's all your vitamins. The B's, folic acid is considered a B, but then it gets its own place. And where our folic acid guy is. So A, D, E, and K again are the fat soluble ones that you taking it in a pill form, you would have to be careful that you don't cause toxicity issues, but they would have to be huge amounts. And it also fascinates me looking at these slides to see what they key in on. But vitamin A, because it's important for growth and development, that's probably also why it's so good with cancer, and D is also, and we'll probably find all of them, and that you just want to eat whole foods. There we go, the mushrooms again are really high in vitamin D. So the B's are water soluble, and pretty much everything that is, every new one they find that our body doesn't make. What's interesting is there's so many flavonoids and polyphenols, and they don't classify them as vitamins. Because it's micro amounts that we need. And I just like this picture because and you all did it probably, I don't remember, in your slideshow, like what is the best source of this and that? And it really is eating a rainbow, eating lots of stuff. There's kiwi. Yeah, so there's gaps in there because some things that they named as a vitamin turned out not to be a vitamin. So that's why B4 is missing. I also like this picture because it has the sweet potatoes, which are a wonderful source of so many things. But these are all the water soluble ones. You cannot overdose on these because your body will excrete them either in your sweat, in your urine, or with ascorbic acid, you get diarrhea and then you just back off. Yeah, and the big thing about B vitamins is they're going to be cofactors, the coenzymes. So when we talked about enzymes in Chem 106, these guys are coenzymes. This is an interesting picture because it's saying, hey, this is a wonderful source of each one of these. Nobody picked B6, and I was going to make a slide on B6, and I forgot. But thiamine was the first one isolated, and so the numbering is just based on when it was isolated. And they are a lot of them. So niacin and riboflavin are NADH and FADH2. NADH, these guys transport electrons to make ATP. And so there is a huge fad right now. It's been going on for a couple of years in people, in athletes, especially ones who are doing distance, so bike riders. And it's with NADH. So rather than doing niacin, because that would be the step before, and that gives them more energy because of ATP. There's a guy last term who did his talk on NADH because he was taking supplements of it. Have you seen? There's people that one guy who does the talk, he promotes one of them. Yeah, it was interesting. So I picked one of those TED Talks and put up there for you guys. And now that guy must have, he works at Harvard. And I've listened to several of his talks and he's extremely arrogant. But he must have this really good search engine filter thing because now whenever I go on YouTube, I get one of his talks and I'm like, really, I'm done listening to you. He's actually a premier guy on longevity and stuff, but I start having an issue when they start promoting all their own things that they've made, their products that put in his promotion code. And I'm like, I don't like that you're telling, like using your knowledge and your research to gain off of people. All right, they help these guys for NADH. This guy is what changes pyruvate into acetate. Pentazonic acid is part of coenzyme A, which transports things into the Krebs cycle. One of the other ones is one of the steps in the Krebs cycle. It's a cofactor for the enzymes. So basically it helps in the catabolism or oxidation of our carbs, our fatty acids, and our amino acids. And one of the ones that's missing, which is B11, is carnitine, and carnitine is what transports fatty acids into their spiral, but it's no longer considered essential. And so that's what happened. So the ones that are missing, it turns out our body does make them. And so initially they thought they were essential and they were water soluble. So their big job is, and that's why that's in bigger print, is these guys, the B vitamins, help your enzymes do their thing. And those of you who talked about the B vitamins, some of you had organic chemistry or biochemistry, so the words coenzymes and enzymes aren't going to be as scary, but B vitamins also help making blood cells, and that especially is B12. So pernicious anemia that Laurel talked about is a type of anemia where your B12 is low, but there's many factors that lead up to that because you might be getting enough B12, but if you're not absorbing it, and B6 is big in blood vessel development. It's interesting. They transport cofactors, and as Maddie talked about, biotin, which is a B vitamin, but they often call now vitamin H, is for healthy skin and hair and tissues. And so a lot of people, it's a huge thing. A lot of people take a lot of biotin because And I wonder how much of this is all placebo in brain health. So pretty much these guys are all around. So, and again, the ones that are missing, the numbers that are missing is they don't meet the definition. They're not essential. Our body can make them. And so what the original definition of vitamin is, they are no longer, but that's some of them, and you'll find it, and it's interesting. So B8 is inositol, which is a second messenger in a lot of systems. And choline, so that's acetylcholine, but choline, really high source in eggs. There's questions if you can get too much choline and having toxicity from it, which is interesting because it's water soluble, and vitamin B10. I don't know why I made that one really large, but it's apparently, it's the organic chemist in me. It's a powerful antioxidant, and I guess our body makes it. And then B11 was fascinating to me because everywhere I looked, they gave it a different name. And so my understanding is it was carnitine, and carnitine is used to bring fatty acids to be oxidized to make ATP. But some places were saying it was salicylic acid over in India. And then I can't remember what this one was calling it, Polemzer. So I don't know if that's carnitine in like German or whatever language that is. So carnitine actually, more for those of you who have, carnitine is like why my animals are not vegetarian, because they cannot make carnitine. So it is, it's an amino acid that is not one of the amino acids we use for building protein. So it's not in those 20 amino acids, but it is an amino acid, and our body does make it in the liver. And so if you eat liver, you get high quantities of it, but animals can't make it. And so your dog and cat has to eat meat products to get enough of that, or you have to supplement with carnitine. So maybe my other class, because it's actually a big fad that a lot of humans supplement with carnitine for different reasons and stuff. And then vitamin C, which almost everybody, when you think of vitamin C, you think, well, that's vitamin C. That's what I think of. And that's ascorbic acid, is its official name, or ascorbate. And we usually think of it in citrus fruits, but vitamin C is found all over the place. And this is the idea, you're gonna take it in a pill, you're gonna get much larger doses. But I mentioned when Sammy was giving her presentation, the bioavailability in whole foods is so much higher than when you take it as a supplement. And there's also the form of vitamin C. So there's ascorbate versus ascorbic acid. And so some people will be like, I can't take vitamin C. It causes me to have a rash around my mouth and stuff. And that's often the different forms and stuff. But the amount of vitamin C in an orange is only like 50 milligrams. It's like, well, I could take 1,000 milligrams just by taking one of these humongous pills and stuff. And the thing is the 50 milligrams is amplified like 10 or 20 fold. So it is really like having an orange is like getting 1,000 milligrams because of everything else that's in the orange. It's not that they're each individually working as antioxidants. They are, and they're also amplifying each other. And that's where you're getting into this idea of quantum and vibrations. One of the things back in the day, and I think it's still the same, are you going to buy a vitamin where it's completely man-made or it's isolated? And one of the places they isolate is certain types of cherries. So some of my other class did a talk on cherries, and cherries are amazing. And I'm hoping the cherry crop is not going to be affected by this weather, since it tends to be a little bit further upstream where I'm assuming they're not getting all the rain. But I know the strawberries, like local strawberries, are not going to do well this year. And I thought, well, it's drying out. They might come, and then it started raining again last night.
Strawberries are doing great in my garden.
I know, but well, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. The slugs are also doing great, and so I'm hoping the cherries, though. I love cherries. And And this was something I didn't know, but I know about the collagen. So vitamin C is a huge, I don't know how long it's been a fad, but with skin and these people who are whatever, do skincare and stuff, is vitamin C is put in almost every product for skin. And that has to do with collagen. And so collagen is a protein and it makes a triple helix. So it's like a braid when you braid your hair. And to keep it nice and tight, it's really high in, it's one of the T amino acids. I don't remember if it's tyrosine or what, but anyway, that amino acid is really susceptible to oxidative damage, and vitamin C fixes it. But if collagen gets oxidized, it doesn't make its nice tight braid, and it starts getting leaky. And so if you have a vitamin C deficiency, you get leaky collagen, and collagen is your blood vessels. And that's why scurvy, what happens with scurvy. So if you ever saw Pirates of the Caribbean, Johnny Depp is a perfect, all of them actually show scurvy. So they're going to be losing their teeth. They're going to have bleeding gums. And yeah, so if you start having, take more, just eat an orange. But the biggest, so people take collagen, they say they put in their skincare. You see like 0.1% change in the skin is apparently from all these products, even the highest priced ones. Where you see the biggest difference is if you feed your microbiome. Because again, it turns out your microbiota is what is helping your body to make collagen. And so when people start having better microbiota, they start having healthier skin and healthier everything. And it was something when I initially started doing the 30-day challenges, it was before COVID. And I remember the first group of students, I was actually amazed because they all did it. And they all were doing different things. And every single student commented about their skin. And how much their skin improved in that month. And I kept trying to figure out why. I mean, one, it's the thing that we notice the most, right? Because we're looking, and just because of the age you guys all are, and so post-puberty, you're still going through stuff, things, hormones are changing. Once you have a baby, your skin totally changes and all the issues seem to go away. But and also as you get older. But if your microbiome is healthier, and so a lot of people are eating more fruit or doing a salad or doing something that was, or stopping eating junk food, and that was making their microbiome much healthier. And your microbiome apparently somehow is helping your body make collagen, and it's a huge increase in the amount of collagen they were seeing in people and making you look much younger apparently. And so it was a talk. He had two sisters come in. I don't know if it was a talk I had you guys listen to. And he didn't know that, he thought the woman came in to see him and brought somebody, and he thought it was her daughter, and it was her sister, who was only 2 years younger. And so they were both in their 60s, and he thought the one was like in her 40s. And so then he started interviewing her, and it wasn't so much what the one lady was doing that made her look 60. It was more, what was this woman doing that made her look so much younger than every 60-year-old? And it was certain things in her diet. And then they eventually realized it had to do with that she was making her microbiome healthier. So it was last night, I realized when I was looking at the slideshow, I'd forgotten about vitamin C for some reason. And then it occurred to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, for me, what do I think of when I think of vitamin C? If I was in any other class, I always talk about Linus Pauling and for any vitamins. And so he is actually from Oregon. I don't know if I mentioned him before in this class, because I mentioned him in all my classes. He is one of only 2 people who ever won 2 Nobel Prizes. So his first one was in chemistry for all his stuff. Not with vitamin C, but figuring out the alpha helix. That's why he's holding this. So he's from Hawthorne, like 34th and Hawthorne. And there is the Linus Pauling House, and they have this wimpy little alpha helix there. And then the Ferry Museum is 2 doors down. But he didn't get his high school diploma because he didn't like history. And so he was given it after he got 2 Nobel Prizes. The governor gave him an honorary high school diploma. So if you're also a high school dropout, you set to win a Nobel Prize. And he also was told he wasn't going to live into his 20s. So he was very sickly in his teenage years. He really got into what's called orthomolecular medicine, which is taking high doses of vitamins. And so he died in his 90s, maybe 20 years ago. And so what he was doing, people just thought he was totally crazy. He wins his second Nobel Prize was the Peace Prize because he was anti-nuclear testing, and he got thousands of signatures and stuff. And so our government rewarded him with, when he came back with his second Nobel Prize, they took away his passport because they said, if you don't believe in nuclear testing, you can't be a good American. This is in the 50s. But he was really into vitamins, and he was written up as that he was just like completely a quack. Guy wins 2 Nobel Prizes, is the premier guy for protein structure, and like totally changed how we look at molecules. And the National Academy of Science will not publish any of his stuff. So all of his papers start being published in really obscure little journals and stuff. And so it was about 20 to 30 years ago when the vitamin phase starts becoming bigger that he becomes more credible. And but I think I told the story. I know I told it in my other classes. He would come actually here before I was here and give talks. And the only people who would go to his talks were like community members, not the scientists, not the doctors or anything, because they all thought this guy was crazy. You know, he won 2 Nobel Prizes, is extremely brilliant and stuff. And so he believes in megadoses of vitamin C, probably because it's what helped him to make it into his 90s and thriving. He was working into his 90s. He did live down in California because that's where he was working. But yeah, and that's why they always show him with the orange and stuff. And like the interviews will be in like these small magazines and stuff, not promoted. And he wrote a book that isn't going to be published by any big publishing company, but the idea that of taking vitamin C for the common cold. And there are zillions of studies trying to disprove this and saying it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And part of the problem is we've so butchered it. But yeah, anyway, when I mentioned this when Sammy gave her talk, that like right now, we can all probably take about 5 grams of vitamin C. Your body will get rid of any extra. And so you hit a point where it's a threshold. So like for me, it's around 5. And so when I went up to like 550 or 5,500 milligrams, I started getting diarrhea. And so I backed off. So again, when I had cancer, they had me on high doses because I was going to a naturopath and they're big into these things. And so then you know where your threshold is. But I had experimented with myself many years before that. So when Joey was a baby, so it would have been like 22 years ago, and I'd had a cold coming on, and you have to have it. It was a powdered form, so you're not getting all the fillers and stuff if you're taking that much. And I was able to do like 35 grams, so 35,000, so 7 times more. And I got over my cold really fast and stuff. And so if I get a cold, it lasts. I do different stuff now, and a lot of it is actually mental. Which is, I don't have time for this. Go away and right, and drink tea and go do a meditation and then just go for it. Anyway, it's learning how to do affirmations, which have also been butchered really well online. But yeah, you want to have always high levels of these, and it's not just this, it's this whole range of molecules, and it's from eating a whole food diet. So your body's always, so there is the Linus Pauling Institute now at Oregon State, which is the nutrition program there. And they do talks and public talks and stuff all the time. But I went there, they would do a seminar every year. It would be downtown, and now it's down in Corvallis, so I don't get to go. But it was downtown, and there'd be people there, vendors. And I was there with the guy who taught nutrition at the time. And there was this lady, and she was pushing some kind of greens supplement or something, right? And this is 10 years ago. And so she had this thing where she put your hand under a UV light or something, and they could measure the amount of antioxidants in your skin. So they were measuring from the color of your skin, the carotenoids, I think she was saying. And so she didn't really like me because I was like, okay, and I went over and put mine there, and I was like off the record. Like everybody else who was all nutrition teachers and all this stuff, their numbers were really bad and like as low as could be. And so she was like, hey, you should be supplementing with this. It's a whole food supplement, blah, blah, blah. And then mine, she was just like, and I was like, huh, because I didn't do any supplements or anything, but I ate whole food diet. And this actually cracked me up last night when I was making this slide that you can actually, there's apparently Dr. Linus Pauling supplements out there. And I am 100% sure this came out long after Dr. Linus Pauling was walking around on this planet. But so I don't know who decided that they could put his name in there. But the other thing, what you think about with vitamin C and why it works so well with cold is it's an extremely powerful antioxidant. And so I've talked about these before, but I wanted to again, because I get the advantage of reading everybody's comments and notes, that free radicals damage our DNA, damage our blood cells, damage us. And that's called oxidative stress. So a free radical is missing an electron. And that's why you should all take chemistry if you've never had chemistry, so these words don't scare you. And they're trying to get an electron. So there's something called the octet rule if you had some chemistry. And so they all want to have these paired electrons. And so you can see on all of these, they're showing these dots. These are the different molecules. So hydroxyl radical or oxygen itself is really good at stealing electrons and stuff. Inflammation, you get tons of free radicals. One of the biggest sources is our mitochondria, which is in every cell, and it's what's making ATP. And that's these guys, which are called the radical oxygen or reactive oxygen species. So superoxide, hydrogen peroxide, and hydroxyl radical. Smoking has apparently quadrillion or something free radicals in every puff. And so I love this because they make everything the same size as if they're the same amount. The amount of radioactive ionizing radiation you're going to be exposed to, this should be like so minimal. This is going to be one of our biggest sources is our mitochondria. And so there were studies that were done a while ago, and I think I talked about this on Monday, that the fruit flies that were the most active had the most mitochondria, and they also lived the shortest. People who are distance runners don't usually have really long life. And I'm not talking about running 5 miles. I'm talking these people who run like the ultra marathons or working out 25 miles a day. And it's pretty, there's a mental thing that has to shift there too, but they often don't live very long because they have so many mitochondria and they're producing so many free radicals, it overwhelms the body. And so it doesn't mean to be a couch potato. There is that balance point of how much exercise. And so again, that's why this week, that's why I really like the blue zones, is you're looking at hopefully your diet, you know, you're getting to write about what you're doing. If there's any last refining and stuff that you get to do. I don't know. I know Anna had said she'd already found a recipe on their website. I haven't had a chance to look at their website, but hopefully you find something in there that you can make for Memorial Day. So different sources, and that's just another way of saying it. So yeah, it could be, I don't know what order this is going to go. Oh, so from smoke pollution, and we all know that we're polluting our planet. So it's really interesting. I heard this talk this week, and we're all talking about everybody's becoming environmentalists, and oh my gosh, we're so terrible to the planet. And I bike and walk pretty much 99% of the time. And so, and I line dry my clothes. There's a book that came out, and it was the 10 things that were the 10 greatest inventions of all time. And it's like the bicycle, the clothesline, and things like that. But what we're really doing with all that pollution, the earth actually heals itself. And if you look in the really old geological records, the earth goes through changes like what we're seeing now. What we're doing there is we're polluting ourselves, and our body doesn't know what to do with this kind of stuff. And so we need to clean up the air. And it fascinates me again with the high price of gasoline that people are still driving. as much as they are. When I was in China, and China has huge issues because I would not be able to see probably Amanda, definitely not the back of the room. That's how much air pollution there is. I remember one day going out and I was like, wow, and thinking this probably couldn't be good to be out here today, but and they have tons of people walking and riding bikes, but there's just too many cars, too many things going on. Sunlight does cause mutations, and so that's the UV, but again, more damage is probably caused by not getting enough. So you want that perfect amount of getting some sunshine. It has to be in the middle of the day, like after 10 o'clock, the sun has to be high enough that you're getting the rays to do their thing. Not getting a sunburn, not staying out for hours, the sugar, viruses, certain viruses, getting a cold and stuff. Of course, bacon, having an attitude. Which one's going to go next? Oh, x-rays, right? Our fast food diet, because we are what we eat. Being stressed, having an attitude, and all of this is disappearing because your biggest source, these are all exogenous, means from outside, is your biggest source is coming from in you, which is your mitochondria, which is what uses oxygen. So the air you're breathing is actually creating what are called radical or reactive oxygen species. And that's just the names of the three of them. We actually have enzymes in our body. Our body was already designed within the mitochondria to help to clean up this mess. But the more that you're exercising and making ATP, so that's what the mitochondria does, the more chance you have that you're going to make this. So what happens in the last step of the electron transport chain is oxygen. The reason you eat food is it has electrons, and oxygen wants the electrons. So your car runs on octane, and the oxygen and the octane react in one step and make energy. In our body, it's this long, elegant, like 36-step process to slowly get the electrons out of the food into the oxygen. So in the last step, which is happening in the mitochondria, the electron gets to the oxygen and you make water. And so what happens, water is H2O, as you can see, the hydrogen and the oxygen and the electron didn't come together right. And so oxygen becomes these radicals. And then those free radicals are going to still stuff. And so this is somebody's rendition of a DNA molecule, which is going to make these guys, which are called ROS or ROS. And it's interesting because I just did this with my Chem 106 and they had a worksheet yesterday. In both my classes, everyone got every question wrong except the question about ROS. That was okay because we did practice before and everybody got it right. Anyway, naturally, as you age, is the myth that we are told as you age, you're going to make more of these because your mitochondria are not going to work as well. We're told our DNA is going to get shorter as we age. This is called the placebo effect. So if you want to believe that as you age, everything's going to happen and you're going to end up like this, then you will end up like this. If you realize that no, that's not going to happen, that your body heals, and if you feed it right with thoughts from the inside as well as the food from the outside. One of the things with meditation is you're slowing down your breathing. So you're slowing down the amount of oxygen that gets into you. You're slowing down the formation of these. You're giving your body the chance to mop up the mess. And so it doesn't mean you necessarily have to sit cross-legged on the floor. Eventually you end up like that because there's other much more reasons, which has to do with, we have a spine different from the dog spine that is like the miracle of us. And so that has to be vertical. And that's actually the point of yoga, which is not correctly taught, but it is to get you so you can sit, so your spine is straight up and down. But one of the other things is you're breathing through your nose, and most of us don't breathe through our nose. And when you're breathing through your nose, I had a yoga teacher and he was really adamant about this, and he finally was able to explain it. I heard it from several different places. And there's actually a lot of talks about this. It's become a fad, but your nose is much smaller than your mouth. So you can only take in, you're taking in much less oxygen. And so learning how to breathe through your nose again, in case you do not, is really important, and learning how to breathe slower. And so it's been really interesting because this term, as I said, I took on more than I can really should have. But one of the things I've been doing also is I've been doing a meditation class, and I have noticed since I started, because there's a thing, I think they call it the 20-20-20, which I think is really funny. And I'm like, what are they talking about? And it's that you're supposed to breathe in for 20 counts, hold your breath for 20 counts, and then breathe out. And I was like, well, let's do the 3-3-3. I can do like 3 counts in, hold my breath for 3, but they're counting much faster than I was. But I did notice like 2 days ago, I was doing something and I was like, oh my gosh, I can like breathe. Like, even though I'm definitely sleep deprived and other things, because I can feel changes in my body, I'm like, my breathing has become much slower and calmer. The 20-20-20 also reminds me of when I was in Nepal and first time I went to high elevation. And I had read this in some book that, you know, you take 20 paces and then you just stop and take a break for like 5. Well, that worked till 10 paces. And I'm like, okay, we'll do 10 and 10. So I would take 10 steps and I'd pause for 10. And then eventually it was 5 and 20. And it's, anyway, so what does radical oxygen species, these free radicals, whether they're coming from the mitochondria, cancer, like every type of cancer, that's from free radical damage, which is going to change how the functioning of the cell. But this is damage to the cell membranes, and vitamin E is really good at protecting cell membranes. There is one guy online, I listened to him a long time ago, and now he's really big into keto, and he also is promoting all of his own stuff. But he would talk about if you're going to eat meat and you're going to cook meat, so that's how I know it was like 20 years ago, he would actually break a vitamin E supplement into it while he was cooking it to help to protect the cell membranes, because he was talking about how much oxidative stress is happening if you're eating meat because of the heat that's going to be involved in cooking meat. And it's really interesting now because he's very big into keto and staying in the keto strips, making sure he stays in ketosis. Heart damage, liver damage, cataract damage, I talk about just briefly. So you can see the fogginess in her eye, so everything's foggy. Smoking, we know people who smoke. I had a student and I thought she was, you know, I was like, this is 25 years ago. I thought she was much older than she was. She'd been a swimsuit model. She was only like 30 and I thought she was 45 to 50. And it was that she was a smoker. And it's just like suddenly you might look great in your 20s and suddenly you hit 30 and you're actually at 60. But your body can heal. It does take time. And one of the biggest things is the common cold, which is what COVID is. So common cold is a coronavirus and COVID is a modified version of that. And then inflammation. It just blows my mind. I've said it before in here that the amount of inflammation, like when I was your guys' age, I never talked about having pain and inflammation. I remember waking up on my 25th birthday and going, yeah, I think that was the first time I felt pain. And I was like, what is that about? But of seeing young people like Joey went out and played, and Joey's in great shape. And he's whatever, 24, and he went out and played football with neighbor kids who were all 8 or 9. He's like, okay, that's not going to happen again, because he couldn't walk the next day. He's like, you got to do something for me. And I was just, I'm the compassionate mom, and I just thought it was the funniest thing and just laughed. And then he went and played basketball with the kids. That was the best thing he could do. And yeah, cancer cells are those. And so somebody slide that you're going to be in disease. We want to find a balance where, and we do have natural defense to, we have enzymes in our body to help to clean up the mess. But yeah, if you're going to eat crappy food, you're going to have more free radicals. And if you want to help clean up the mess, you want to eat the stuff that you're putting into you. And again, putting into you also from your thoughts. So negative thoughts are going to create radicals, whereas positive thoughts are going to help to clean up the mess. And so learning how to slow down. So I have a friend, and it actually fascinated me because whenever you'd ask him questions, at first it was a little annoying. It was like you were somebody from the South. He would always pause. He's a really good listener. And so it's learning how to do that, when, especially when somebody's angry at you, it's rather than getting angry right back at them, is to pause for a moment and possibly try to see the view from their viewpoint. This is superoxide dismutase, which is an enzyme that is in all of us, but they've actually made it into these nanoparticles now. And you can, I don't think you can buy the nano ones because that would be astronomically, but guy who taught me in graduate school, he is one of the guys who's behind studying this enzyme. And it blew me away doing a quick Google search that there's several books written about superoxide dismutase, which tells me it's a huge fad and you can buy the pills. I apparently didn't show the pill that like, there's so many different people who are selling this pill and they're saying this one pill is going to make you so much healthier. Anyway, so vitamins A, C, and E were classically taught in most nutrition classes that these are your antioxidants. But again, rather than taking them as a pill where you're just getting A, C, and E, and that's not actually the form your body wants, that's the form your body will change things into, is you're better to get nutrients. And please notice, chocolate is on there. And yeah, that these guys and nuts, your greens, I think that's papaya, beans, legumes. I know how much you all love the legumes. There is a mushroom on there too. That your antioxidants, to say it's vitamins, so vitamin C is up there, but then there's resveratrol, curcumin, which is going to be in turmeric. There's so many. This is green tea. It's going to have that. There's so many antioxidants that are not classified as a vitamin. And so rather than thinking about it, should I be taking a pill or whatever, is you want to be eating as spectrumly high as possible. You want to be eating the rainbow. So this is another picture that shows, so a healthy atom, octet rule, has 8 electrons. And this is a free radical, it's missing 1. And an antioxidant, I don't know why they made it look evil, but an antioxidant has extra electrons. It's always going to have 2 extras, so it can fill in the missing 1 on 2 different free radicals, because electrons are always going to be in pairs. So it's somehow in the bond that the bond will change. And so it gives up 2 electrons. This is also something, so chlorophyll I've talked about, but seaweeds. So there's a lot of people are big into that. We should be eating seaweeds every day because you're getting the salts, you're getting all those micronutrients that a lot of you talked about, like magnesium and sodium, potassium, but they're also going to be really high in chlorophyll and other things. And then there's also sea moss. I don't know if anybody's heard of sea moss. I had a student last year from Jamaica who gave me some, and I'd never heard of it. And you can actually find it, and it tastes like salt water. But apparently really promotes your immune system. This would be one of the carotenoids. So when you see that kind of structure again. Anyway, there's millions of these. These were all the flavonoids and polyphenols and anthocyanins. And so it comes back. I don't remember if I showed the slide in here before or not. It's been at the end of like 10 different talks. And I think I may have made it once, but I wanted to show it again because I want to talk about your next set of presentations. So it's eating the rainbow, eating a wide variety. Does it matter that this is high in this nutrient and this is high in that nutrient? That we don't want to become reductionist, but the more color you eat and the more variety of color you eat, you're getting, and this is called, again, reducing it, because that's what they pay me to do, is this is their oxidative, that these guys fix the oxygen radical, that these guys can clean up that mess. And this is why I wanted to show this slide, is because these guys are the best at doing it. And that is all your spices. And that's why your last talk is on the spices. And so you guys last week actually blew me away because you all picked your spice, which is awesome. You can absolutely change it. So I would recommend you look into it to make sure you can find stuff. So nobody picked cloves. Nobody ever picks cloves because they're so overlooked. They are like at the top of this, and sumac bran is not actually a spice. Sumac is interesting because I thought it was a toxin, but somebody picked cinnamon, somebody picked oregano, turmeric. I was trying to see if there's other ones on here. You know, technically cocoa could be picked because to me that's you picked cumin, I think, Edgar. I can't remember, somebody parsley, I'm pretty sure somebody picked basil. Anyway, so if you don't like yours, cloves is definitely available. And I know there's tons of stuff on all of these. So just make sure. So, because again, as I said, we're going to next week. I don't see you Monday, and then suddenly it's going to be Wednesday. And so that would be when, if you need to make a switch. But as I was talking about antioxidants, just when I woke up this morning, I'm like, oh, of course, melatonin. So like I added this one actually this morning. I had the slide already there, and so I threw it in. So melatonin, of course, we all have heard of because it has to do with sleep, right? And it is more than sleep. It is our biological clock, which is why it's there. But one of its biggest things is it's an antioxidant. It's actually, some places say it is the strongest antioxidant in our body. It doesn't make you sleep. It is released when you sleep. That is why sleep is so important, because when you sleep, your body repairs itself. And when it repairs itself, you create free radicals. And so you have to have somebody there to clean up the mess. So it's basically like somebody's making whatever, and somebody, I'm making dinner, it's going to be a mess. And so the dog and the cat clean the floor, and Joey does all the dishes. So yeah, I don't know where I got that from. That's 5 times more powerful than vitamin C. It's probably even more than that. And again, getting it as a supplement is not going to do the same thing. I'm pretty sure it's a placebo effect, that people who take it and say it helps them to sleep. Because again, melatonin is being released while you sleep, and it helps to clean up the damage, and it has to be coming from inside you. But this is why apparently, I don't know who would do this, that you have fewer wrinkles in the morning. None of you guys have wrinkles, but I'm also seeing you at 8:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning. So of course you don't. Anyway, and animals sleep amazingly. So if you have an animal, seeing that. But if you have low melatonin, you're going to have low melatonin if your sleep is interrupted. And that's the question. So which came first? So they're always saying, oh, your melatonin's low, that's why your sleep is bad. But if your sleep is not good, you're going to have low melatonin, and that's going to make your immune system not function so well. So when you are ill, the most important thing you can do is take naps. Every other culture takes naps during the day. When Joey was a baby, I took a nap every day with him. So all these people are like, oh my gosh, but I've never slept better in my life than when Joey was a baby, because I followed the Sherpa tradition, which is you sleep with your baby and you take naps with them. So they're always right there with you. You carry them around. And like when you look at traditional cultures, that's what they all do. And Joey and I slept great. He just wanted to be near me. And heart disease and cancer is a huge link to low melatonin, because again, it's powerful antioxidant, and oncostatic just means specifically it helps to mop up issues with cancer. So cancer is just a cell that is misunderstood. So when I did my meditations when I had cancer, I wasn't trying to explode the cells. I was just trying to see them turn into healthy cells again. And so it's kind of like all of us. We go through times when people misunderstand us, and it really frustrates us, right? And it's like, no, you're just not understanding. This is what I meant. And so that's what the poor cancer cells, they're just a cell that got off track a little bit, and we just got to bring it back on track. But cancer cells have melatonin receptors, and melatonin will actually slow down their division. So it's almost like the cancer cells knows. It's like saying, no, somebody help me. And it wants the melatonin. And so you absolutely, the thing is, I will tell you, when I had cancer, I just wanted to sleep all the time, because you're really fatigued, because your body's trying to clean it up. You absolutely need to get a face mask. If you don't have one, you got to get one. You have to sleep in complete darkness. And so I don't think any of us have the fancy blinds that come down and completely darken out your room. You should have that too. I sleep in my sunroom now because it's so awesome outside. So Joey got me a really wonderful mask. And it makes such a difference. And then you take naps in the middle of the day and completely black out. But there's our molecule. And so having molecules in your next talk, People with, they found that people with prostate cancer and autism had much lower levels of melatonin. And so they're going to have more of these issues, interruption of everything. And I wrote that really big. Breast cancer, people with breast cancer tend to have about 1/10 of normal melatonin. And so you should not sleep with night lights. When you have kids, don't have night lights for them. You just have to retrain yourself. Now with that, my mom, I can't retrain her. There's some things I have retrained her with, but one of them was the night light, that she's convinced herself that she's going to fall if there's not a light on at night. So, and my mom also did go through breast cancer 10 years ago. So night shift workers also have 50% higher rates of breast cancer. So try to never, ever have the night shift. They have also other things that are issues. Now with that, one of the biggest causes of low melatonin is not your sleep. Again, when you have interrupted sleep, you'll have low melatonin. What's going to interrupt your melatonin, so it's not going to do what it needs to do, are what's called electromagnetic fields. And they are produced by all the electrical stuff that is around you. Now, we're in a classroom, we're awake, our melatonin is low during the day. At nighttime, when you go home today, look around your bedroom and look at all the electronics you have in there and unplug them and move them somewhere else, especially around your head. Your cell phone should be off at night, or at least in a mode where you're not and not next to you. I don't understand why everybody has a TV and a computer in their room. They are not in any of our bedrooms. And I told the story in my other classes. When COVID first happened, Joey saw it and got us like the best Wi-Fi, and my sleep went all terrible. And I didn't know what was going on. And then suddenly one day I was like, oh my gosh, it was like 2 weeks into it. And I was like, you got to program that Wi-Fi so it's off 12 hours a day. And so it's off from whatever 9 till 9. And my sleep went right back to normal. And so it does. Electromagnetic fields also interfere with the flight patterns of birds and bees and dolphins and whales. And the last pandemic happened when radios became common, and our pandemic happened when 5G became common. So if you like conspiracy issues, that's the one. But 5G is here, it's wonderful. I love having more communication. And so when we change the vibrations, which we have to, for the earth. But melatonin is all about vibrations. All these are about vibrations. And so meditation, harmonious thoughts, and good vibes, as important as the food you are putting in. And so from Rutgers in New Jersey, they found that when you meditate, you double, 100% is doubling your melatonin. So sitting for 5 minutes before you go to sleep and just focusing on your breath. Everybody's like, I have all these thoughts. Well, make them into thoughts of, I do, where I just go through the day. I have trouble meditating at night because I fall asleep, but I make it where I'm just going to sit for 5 minutes. I don't set a timer or anything. Sometimes it's 3 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes. That's very rare at night with this time in the term. But you double your melatonin. And I often just walk through my day with gratitude. Even when something not good happened, I don't dwell on it. I just go, that was really nice that happened, just calmly, and it helps you to slow down. Or you can do just focusing on your breath or a mantra. This is something that always amazes me, is the word meditation and the word medication. So it's funny because people, when they write about their meditation, they often will have a typo, and it's just this one letter typo. Anyway, people who are regular practitioners of meditation, they actually see this is a 4-fold change. So rather than doubling, it's a 4-fold change. And so having it being part, and if it's just 5 minutes here or 5 minutes there on a break, of finding time to just sit. And there's also mom singing creates a synchronicity between them and melatonin. And again, we have magnetic fields going around this. He has to do his talk, and so I'm going really fast, so he could come up here in a minute. Anyway, we're vibrational beings, and so This guy, Rupert Sheldrake, he's over in England from the name. Did a lot of, and this is also why like your animals be waiting for you at the door when you get home, because they know you're on your way, because they're very sensitive to these things. This was also something that's fascinating. So, and this is James Watson from one of the guys who figured out the structure of DNA, so Nobel laureate. And this is worded by Wikipedia, it's straight from there, which is where those references are from. And it's worded terribly, but they're saying that because you don't have enough radical oxygen species, so if you're not exercising at all, you'll actually have higher rates of cancer. So the radical oxygen species at just the right level, they help to mop up, because they get rid of other damage, because they're really good, because they're radicals. So they'll get rid of even worse things. And then when you're sleeping, your body helps clean up the rest of the mess. And so it's all a balancing. And so when you exercise, you create these radical oxygen species. It's the over exercising where they make too many, where we can't clean them up, that you start having the problem. And so everything's in balance, eating a nice range of stuff. And so you need these spikes in ROS. And so it's walking, whatever your exercise is, which is what you're doing. That was one of the things they found with the blue zones. I'm going to assume he went to the bathroom. So it's finding the balance. I think this is my last, well, it's not my last one, but we'll come back. Yeah, finding the balance of sleep rather than eating fast food. Having a picnic. So these are some of the things you get to do with the blue zones, right? So exercise, sleep, eating healthy, and having fun, having a community. Laughter is really important. Again, every picture I find of these guys, being playful, being grateful, breathing and smiling. And so I'm going to hope he just went to the restroom because he has to do his talk. And you guys have, so Monday, do you have an email to yourself? Or how are you going to do your presentation?
Before coming, I just double checked everything, so I didn't have any problems with the Google Drive.
So why don't you go ahead and pull it up? So while he's getting ready